K293CF Moreno Valley.
The following program on KCAA is pre-recorded.
Welcome to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are coming to you today from KCAA Radio. We are on 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. If you miss our live broadcast, check out kcaaradio.com. All the shows are archived there, or better yet, you can see us live in person on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, or the Android. Look for the Building Solid Foundations channel app. That's a free channel to download. You can catch all of our shows on that application. You can actually see us, although I will warn you, I look a lot better on the radio than I do on the television. You can also catch us on your favorite podcast platform. We're on about 15 platforms. We'll be expanding that as well. Today, we're talking 1031s. What is a 1031, you say? Brandon Burns is here to explain that to us. Brandon Burns is a senior leadership role in a 1031 qualified intermediary. You have no idea what that means. Maybe if you're in real estate, you do. We're going to explain what that is. And it's basically called Investors 1031 Exchange. He's an experienced commercial real estate executive who served on investment committees of several real estate development firms throughout his career. We're going to get deeper into some of the stuff he's done, but for now, welcome, Brandon. Glad to have you on Building Solid Foundations.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nowhere else I'd rather be.
Right. So Brandon is someone that I met through local real estate investor network, SDCIA. I happen to be on the board of that, the San Diego Creative Investors Association. And as you know, if the listeners that have listened to the show for a while, I like real estate. I am all about real estate. That's what I do for a living, and I love talking about it. And there's little niches and specialties in real estate, and 1031 is one of those. So Brandon, tell us, what is a 1031? It's not the time of day. What is a 1031?
Thank you, Steve. I have a lapel pin for 1031, and a number of people occasionally come up and ask me, why do you like Halloween so much?
Okay, there you go.
So there certainly are different ways to look at it. But
now, do you celebrate at 10:31 a.m. on 1031?
I feel like I should now.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
that you mention it, that's a very good point.
Okay.
But specifically as it relates to real estate, I think one of the amazing things about the United States is if someone wealthy or powerful can do something, then it applies to all of us. And so in the tax code, some people 100 years ago who are wealthy and powerful said, I would like to be able to grow my wealth in real estate. I would like to be able to expand into bigger and better pieces of real estate. And I don't want to have a tax bite every time that happens. So it's been part of the tax code, and it's in Section 1031. That's why we call it a 1031 exchange. It's because it's Section 1031 of the tax code. And essentially, if you are going to sell a piece of real estate and buy one or several as a replacement, you can fully defer and fully avoid taxes if you follow the steps outlined in Section 1031 and you have a babysitter. The tax code calls it a qualified intermediary. So my firm does. There are other firms that do that. But for lack of a better term, to call it having a babysitter along the process. So, glad to dive into as many details as we want today. But, that's my world, and I'm really grateful to be here with you and discuss it.
Okay, and it's interesting that a lot of our laws that come about, so the politicians out there, those are mostly from the rich and powerful class, and they stand up and talk about, well, rich aren't paying fair taxes, and who wrote the laws to allow that, and who's exploiting it the most? The very people that talk about that write special laws, and they didn't include that in most people's primary education, did they? They didn't share it with a lot of people. It's not on the news. Yeah. But as you said, laws here applies to one, applies to all. Mm-hmm. So they're not secret, but they're not very well known. And if you understand what that group of people has put in to help themselves, and if you can access that, you can take advantage of it as well on a smaller scale. But it can help you tremendously. And you think about if you buy and sell properties every time. So let's say the real estate's gone up, I don't know, roughly 12, 15% per year for the last, I don't know how long, 18 years, something like that. So that real estate potentially could be worth 3 times what you originally bought, purchased it for. Now, if you sold that difference is profit, and it's a huge capital profit. And you're going to pay the highest rate of taxes you could on that probably about 50% roughly when you all said and done. State taxes, federal taxes, fees, blah, blah, blah.
It can actually be, at times be over 50%. There's 4 taxes that someone may pay. So
Right.
it's definitely a large bite.
Right. So what if instead of selling a $2 million property and keeping $1 million of it to invest in other things, you sold a $2 million property and had all $2 million to go? You'd have twice as much property to purchase and grow again, right? So that's what a 1031 allows you to do. So that, think about people that bought that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house back in the late 1980s, and they bought it for, I don't know, $150,000, $175,000 potentially, even here in Southern California. And now all of a sudden that thing is worth $1.5 million, depending where it is. It could be very easily. That's a huge profit, and they would get completely destroyed on taxes if they cash that in. But they can 1031 and get into that value of property on an exchange.
That's exactly right. And you make a great point. And I have actually a very specific example along those lines. So I had a client who is an older lady. She's a retired teacher. And when she was in her late 20s, someone said, you need to buy real estate. And instead of taking her summer and going with her friends to Cabo or wherever they were going to enjoy their summer, she got a summer job and saved up enough money to do a down payment on a duplex. And about every 10 years, she 1031 exchanged that property. So the value of the property she owned would rise. When it got close to maximizing that value, then she would sell it and buy 1 or 2 other properties where that wealth could continue to grow. And today she gets about $12,000 a month from her pieces of real estate. And she told me, she said, Brandon, this really changes my life. As a teacher on a teacher's pension, I'm not sure I could have stayed in San Diego, but I'm so grateful that someone told me so long ago, hey, you need to buy real estate. And I took that one summer and literally changed my life forever.
Right. And that's just being smart with your money. And now most people would have either gone to Cabo and partied away, or if they worked that summer job, they'd have bought a car with it.
Right.
Right. They'd have taken a great vacation or bought Sea-Doos or something like that. And if you discipline yourself and you buy that, and then you're smart about exchanging that tax-free. So you're not paying the taxes. Now, does that mean that the government's saying, we're just letting you have this free, there's no taxes on it? No, they're saying what we want you to do is continue to grow that, and we're going to tax you later on the higher amount. And every time you exchange it and it goes up, we can get more taxes on it, which means at some point, if you ever sell it without an exchange, you will pay all the taxes that are owed. Is that correct?
All the way back through, yeah. So the government wants their fair share of whatever profits we make, right? And that's true on income taxes, sales tax. There's a number of different taxes that happen. But 2 things have to occur for someone to pay taxes. 1, they have to make money, right? And 2, they have to take receipt of that money. So a way that I look at it is, Steve, let's say you put all of your money when you were 20 years old in Apple stock and you didn't touch it.
That would have been nice.
It would have been very nice. And today that money is that Apple stock may be worth $10 million, right? Along the way, between now and when you were 20, even though it's grown and you've quote unquote made money, you haven't taken receipt of that money, so you haven't paid any taxes on that growth.
It's unrealized.
Unrealized, yeah, exactly. And the 1031 exchange is the same idea. So even though you're buying and selling, having a qualified intermediary or a 1031 exchange accommodator, which are 2 terms that are used interchangeably, to hold on to your funds and custodian those funds. That way you're never technically taking receipt of those funds. And that's a large part of why the 1031 exchange works and why there's not a taxable event that occurs during that time.
And then that's why they said the babysitter, that's why that babysitter is in place.
Right.
Same thing when you do a self-directed IRA account,
right.
A retirement account, there's a custodian that takes care of that, so you're not actually touching it. Everything's always arm's length.
Exactly.
Because once you touch the money personally, it is realized income, then you will owe taxes on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so someone else is handling this for you in your name as a trustee, right?
Yeah, and it can be so powerful. There's 4 major hurdles that someone has to be aware of. Many people who dabble in real estate are aware of time constraints, which is the first one. But from a financial standpoint, one thing that I do always like to mention to people, it's always important for people to know, is because you can play games with debt, you can pay off a loan or take out a loan prior to selling. If you were to sell a property for $1 million, the IRS is not going to look at your debt, what you paid for it, how much money you made, as it relates to a 1031 exchange. they're going to say, okay, for you to fully defer taxes, can't touch the money, have to do it within a certain time frame. It has to be the same consistency of entity or a continuity of taxpayer. But then from a financial standpoint, the most important thing is you have to buy the same amount of real estate that you sold. So
the same or more. Is that
same
right?
or more, correct.
That's right.
We have a lot of clients today that are saying, hey, I bought this property for $500,000 10, 15 years ago. Today it's worth $1 million. Maybe I owe 500 on it still. Who knows where we're heading into, right? There's some uncertainty in the marketplace. There's certainly some things changing. People are saying, gosh, okay, I'm going to take my $1.5 million property, I'm going to pay off the loan, and I'm going to take my $1 million, I'm going to own something clear and free. And that'll make me feel better as we roll into some uncertainty. Well, that's not how the 1031 exchange works. If that happens in that scenario, they're going to pay taxes on that $500,000 difference.
Because they basically had a debt forgiven.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right. So that's really important, I think, to mention for folks, because that's probably the number one thing that people are least educated on as they go through the process.
Yeah, people understand that having debt forgiven is considered by the IRS as having income.
Yeah.
It's no different than having that money come in and then using that to pay the debt off. I wonder how that's going to go over with the people that got their school debt. By the way, they don't realize their
Maybe
income just went up $10,000 a year.
Some unintended consequences.
Exactly. They thought they were in one income bracket. They just got moved to another one. We're going to have to take a short break. When we come back, I want to get deeper into some of these restrictions, which is 4 restrictions on 1031 exchanges. We're talking to Brandon Burns. He is a qualified intermediary for 1031 exchanges, and this is Building Solid Foundations Radio. We'll be right back after this short break.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 951-378-5316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. This is your host, Steve Matley. Today we're talking to Brandon Burns. He is a qualified intermediary for 1031 exchanges, and that is a mechanism, as we discussed in the first part of the program, of where you can exchange real estate into another real estate by using an intermediary and avoid the immediate taxes from it. So when we left off at the break, we were talking about there was 4 constraints around this. One of them is time. So let's talk about what does that time restriction look like? When you say time restriction, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the IRS has said, hey, we're going to give you this great tax break, this great deferral. We're going to keep you from having a taxable event today. However, we're going to put some constraints on it. And as it relates to time, there are 2 clocks that start the moment someone no longer owns a property. And a lot of times people ask me, what day is that? Is that the day I go into contract? Is that the day, this, that, or the other? So that day is the day on the final settlement statement. That's what the IRS is going to look at, and that's going to start 2 clocks that run simultaneously. So let's say someone sold July 1st. Then the first clock is a 45-day identification clock. So within 45 days, a seller of property has to identify, and that means write down and send to the 1031 exchange firm, the qualified intermediary, write down a number, 1 or more addresses that they may or may not end up purchasing. At midnight, and you can really change that at any moment up until midnight on the 45th day. Okay. Midnight on the 45th day, those lock in, and those are the only properties you can buy tax-free going forward. Okay. The second clock is a 180-day exchange clock. So an exchange is going to end when one of 2 things happen. A, you bypass that 180 days, you reach day 181, or 2, you take title to all of the properties that you're going to take title to. The exchange ends when one of
So it can be one or multiple properties. So as you mentioned, you have to go into property that is at least as valuable as what you're coming out of. So if you're coming out of a property and you can't find properties that are that value, that are desirable to you, you can assemble several properties that equal that amount. And generally, as you said, it's going to be equal to the amount that you're selling, including the debt.
Right, that's exactly right. So I had one client that, here in Southern California, we get great appreciation on our properties, right? But at times it can be difficult to buy for cash flow. Okay. So I had a client, he had a travel nurse girlfriend, and he wanted to travel the world with her. She moved every 12 weeks, and he wanted income to do that. So he had a triplex in Ocean Beach, California, and it was about $1.5 million, and he had it mostly paid off. So he said, I'm going to sell this property, but then instead of using that money, taking that money, paying 30, 40, 50% taxes on it, depending on his situation, and then spending that money and running out of it at some point, he said, what I'd rather do is do a 1031 exchange, take that money and put it in the Midwest where he was from in some income producing properties, because you can get better income out there, but not as much appreciation.
Yeah, so the cap rates are higher because as people don't understand, your cap rates usually, if you have a lower value market, you get higher cap rates, meaning higher rent compared to purchase price.
Exactly.
Places like California and Florida and some of the higher priced areas, Washington, it's much different. You'll probably be upside down.
Yeah, often at times.
Your negative cash flow if you're trying to rent properties, right?
Right. I mean, certainly if you buy a property that has a 4% a yield, a cap rate, and your cost of debt is 5%,
and you got to pay the taxes and all the stuff on it,
yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah. So in his situation, he was able to take a property that had appreciated very well in California, move it into a number of single-family homes in Columbus, Ohio, that have great cash flow, and then use that cash flow to travel the world with his relationship without having to worry much financially, and also, more importantly, not having to dip into the money that he'd made, right? So even though in the Midwest there's not going to be great appreciation, you're still probably going to get something, hopefully close to inflation. So your money will continue to, have the same spending power over time, but then having that income to go have life events and life experiences, I think, can just be so powerful.
Right, and of all the places in Ohio, Columbus probably is the place that has the highest probability of some appreciation, is my guess.
The highest, which is probably also a relative term.
Relative term, yeah. But a lot of the Midwest will actually devalue. But there are certain, Columbus is it's college town and capital, and so in Ohio, I know a lot of people invest in Ohio, and there's really no appreciation there. But if you're in for the cash flow,
right,
that is your purpose. It will generate the cash flow.
Right. So it depends. He was able to make his money in California, and then take that money tax-free, not having to pay the California taxes, at least today, and take all of that money instead of giving the government 40% and then kind of moving on. He was able to take all of his money, put it in assets, let it continue to earn for him. So that's powerful, but it does have to be done within those time frames. So the IRS is very, very strict. They're going to look at the settlement statement date when you sell, settlement statement date when you buy, and if that's outside of 180 days, they're going to disqualify the exchange.
In which case you're paying the taxes.
Exactly, that's correct.
All right. Now, what's the second constraint?
So the second constraint, which I mentioned briefly in the last segment, was the IRS is going to look at the net sales price of the property. So financially, they're not going to look at what you paid for the property. They're not going to look at how much debt you have. What they're going to look at is say, okay, if you sold for $1 million and you have one-time non-optional closing costs, which is typically realtor, title, escrow, and 1031 exchange. They'll allow you to subtract that, but so if you sell for $1 million and you have $50,000.
So the transaction cost you can exchange.
The transaction, the non-optional transaction costs, yeah. So if you sell for $1 million and let's say you have $50,000 of non-optional transaction costs, now your net sales price is $950,000. The best way to think about that is that's a high watermark. If you purchase something below that, you certainly can, but you're going to pay taxes on the variance.
Right. So equity does not factor into this at all.
The only thing they look at is, are you touching the equity? Right. So from a financial standpoint, they're just going to look at that net sales price, and then also they're just going to check and make sure that the seller didn't have control or receipt of any money during the time period.
All right. So you can't do a mix and match where I'm going to 1031 exchange and take a few dollars out for myself in the process.
Well, you certainly can.
But you're going to pay taxes on those dollars.
But you're going to pay tax on those dollars. But it's also important to note only pro rata, right? So, certainly we have clients that say, hey, I've made $1 million on this piece of property. I'd like to take $100,000 out, and I am aware that I'm going to pay, $40,000 in taxes next April, but I want to take that $100,000 out and use it to, kid goes to college. Back to our Cabo example, although that would be a very expensive Cabo vacation.
Yes, it would. Paying $40,000.
Right, but you could. It's people's money. They can use it for whatever they want.
That's true.
Which is nice with the exchange is you can say, okay, maybe it's not an all or nothing situation for me. Maybe I'm fine with paying a little taxes. Maybe I want some money in my pocket, and then I can shelter 70, 80, 90% of the taxes that I pay otherwise.
Right. And for some people, they may want to do that, not to go on a Cabo vacation, but for some people they're asset rich because they purchased real estate at a time when it was much less expensive. They've lived there long enough, it's paid off. And meanwhile, appreciation in markets like California have just gone up really, really high. California real estate tends to double about every 15 years. And so if you've been in there for a while, but you may be cash poor. Right. You may be living on a pension from a fairly low paying job. And so that money can make the difference of paying off a medical bill or doing something you need to do, home repair or something like that. So you can do that, and you're going to pay the taxes, but what you're really after is that net proceed because you need the cash for something. So you have the option of doing that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, a lot of people that own have a net worth of a high amount doesn't mean they're wealthy people.
Right.
It means they've been camping on an asset long enough that it's appreciated.
Absolutely.
So all right. That's the sales price. What's the third constraint?
The third constraint is that the seller cannot take what the IRS calls constructive receipt of the funds. Okay. So you have to use a qualified intermediary or a 1031 exchange accommodator. Those terms are used interchangeably. You have to use someone to provide that service, and the seller cannot touch the money.
So every dollar you touch, you pay taxes on.
Correct.
And if you don't touch it, it's tax deferred.
Hopefully, potentially, as long as you do it within the time frame and some of these other things. And then lastly, the fourth hurdle is the IRS wants to track those deferred taxes over time, right? So it's important to note this isn't tax elimination. This is just keeping a taxable event from happening today.
It's deferral.
Deferral. And so if you change who's on title prior to the sale, that's trackable. There's a deed that's filed with the county, and it's a very clear path. If you change who's on title afterwards, same thing, clear path, the IRS can follow it. If you change who's on title during the middle of a 1031 exchange, the IRS cannot track that, and so they disallow the exchange. So for example, if you and I, Steve, are in a partnership and our partnership sold an asset, and I said, gosh, I really liked you before. I don't like you as much now, which I feel like it might be the opposite. But say I wanted to separate from our partnership, and we sold under our partnership EIN number, and the taxpayer that sold was our partnership. And then I went and purchased just myself, and the taxpayer that purchased is just me. Then there's not a continuity of taxpayer. The IRS may not be able to track those taxes across the two tax returns, and so they disallow it. Okay. So it's very important that the sale and the buy show.
So now I really don't like you because you made me pay taxes, right? You screwed up my 1031 exchange. Right. Yeah.
So if somebody's in that situation, a partnership or otherwise, there are things that we can do. It gets a little bit technical as it relates to title, and we certainly can dive into that. But it does get really kind of nitpicky. But it's important to have a qualified intermediary or someone who understands title investing issues prior to the sale. If there's any separation that somebody wants to do, if you're going to separate from husband and wife, or you're going to separate from a partnership, or you have an LLC and there's a bunch of family members in it, or a family trust, and different people want to do different things. It's possible with correct planning, and if you do it far enough in advance to make those changes, but it's not possible to do it last minute or in the middle of the situation.
Okay, so that's why your intermediary hopefully helps keep you out of trouble. We're going to have to take another short break. We're going to come back and continue our conversation on doing 1031 exchanges the right way. We're talking with Brandon Burns with Investors 1031 Exchange, and we'll be right back on Building Solid Foundations Radio.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station, KCAAradio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact kcaaproducer@gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's kcaaproducer@gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're talking to Brandon Burns today, Investors 1031 Exchange. So, Brandon, we kind of went through the particulars of what a 1031 is and some of the restrictions and rules around it. So let's talk about practical application. Now, one thing that's very popular in Southern California, where we are, is the short-term rental market, commonly known as Airbnbs. But the short-term rental market, where you have people in for under 30 days at a time, vacation rentals, weekend rentals, those type of things. And a lot of laws have been changing on that. A lot of jurisdictions are restricting those. They're saying, sorry, now you're in a lottery system and all this, we had 100,000 short-term rentals, but we're only going to limit to 10,000 that get to actually work now. So sorry about the rest of the 90,000. So I'm an investor and I 1031, and I got into one of these deals and I'm going to short-term rental this thing and make a lot of money. And then all of a sudden the city council pulled the rug out from under me. What am I doing?
Yeah, it's a great point, right? So one of the things that we've seen is in Southern California, or really all of California beachfront, rents have gone up roughly 50% over the past 3 to 4 years, right? And that's true, I think, across the U.S., even if not at that level. So a lot of legislators are saying, how do we fix this? How do we put a check mark by our name in the next election where we can raise our hand and say, we tried to do something, whether it worked or didn't work? Golly, I tried.
Yeah, because affordable housing is one of those things they all want to get on the bandwagon and say, I'm the person that's trying to fix the affordable housing issue. And it's those short-term rentals causing the problem because they're taking inventory out of the market. That's why you can't rent a place.
That's certainly some of the rhetoric that's going around, right? So specifically, the city of San Diego has said, hey, we want to take a significant number of homes out of the short-term rental market, and we want to push it either back into the long-term rental market, or we want to put it, try to force some people to sell and try to increase the amount of inventory. So I looked on Wednesday, and on Wednesday, the number of homes that were for sale in the entire county of San Diego was just over 4,000. I think it was like 4,180 or 280, something like that. Currently, there's estimated to be 14 to 15,000 short-term vacation rentals in the city of San Diego alone.
Okay.
So
probably mostly clustered around the coast is my guess.
I do think so. The coast, Balboa Park. And so the city of San Diego said, okay, we're going to issue some licenses. We're going to charge people, and we're going to take that charge, that licensing fee, and we're going to use it to hire a police force, which are currently in the fact of doing. I think it's 12 or 13 individuals to go and be enforcement for this. So they're saying we're going to issue 1% of the city's entire population as rentals, excluding Mission Beach. So that's 5,400 licenses that are going to be issued for the city of San Diego, plus 1/3 of Mission Beach, estimated to be, I think around 1,300. So there's going to be 6,700 roughly licenses that are issued in the city of San Diego. But there's 14 to 15,000 short-term vacation rental properties. So what's going to happen to people, and where I really feel bad for people are the ones that have bought in the last 4 or 5 years, whether they did a 1031 exchange into it and they have all this large tax deferral built up that if they take receipt of that money, they're going to pay taxes on, or people that have bought and they said, hey, on this great vacation rental in Mission Beach or Pacific Beach or La Jolla, I'm going to collect $12,000 a month, $15,000 a month. And so, gosh, I don't mind if my mortgage payment is $9,000, right? I have a friend who has a great duplex in Mission Beach, and he grosses $30,000 a month on this duplex in Mission Beach. And if he ends up not getting a license for that, then there's no one in the world that's going to pay $30,000 a month for a duplex. And I think his duplex is nice, but still $30,000 a month is not real, right? And so there are going to be a number of people that suddenly are going to find themselves without a license and potentially having a mortgage payment that's higher than a long-term renter will pay. And so, those folks, if there's equity in their properties, if they 1031 exchange in and there's a lot of deferred taxes there, or if they've just ridden the market well over the past 4, 5, 7 years, I think it makes sense to do an exchange, do a 1031 exchange, and depending on their goals, there's a number of different things they can do. They can 1031 exchange out of state into something that maybe cash flows a little bit more. They could 1031 exchange into 2 or 3 properties in Southern California and kind of continue to get the growth that hopefully still continue to come and try to diversify their portfolio a little bit so that they're not just stuck with one asset. So that's something that I think is going to be talked about a lot more here in the next 90 days, but today not many people are talking about. And I think for the listeners, it's really important to try to get in front of it and say, hey, am I comfortable holding my property? Am I comfortable taking this risk? Am I comfortable with what's coming? And be educated about it. Or say, hey, I'm not comfortable taking this risk, and maybe make a move before 2, 3, 4,000 other people are trying to make a similar move.
Right. And it's possible that also you can 1031 into properties that are in areas where you can still do your short-term rental business that are not restricting it.
That's a great point.
And most of that seems to be restricted along California, the coastline. But maybe what you could exchange into Scottsdale, Arizona, maybe Palm Springs. There's vacation places, all Branson, Missouri, someplace where there's probably still a very robust short-term rental market, even if the appreciation is that's not what you're in for. You're in for that short-term rental cash flow.
Right.
And there might still be a very robust market in those areas, so you could exchange into something like that.
Absolutely.
And not take those taxes because, Mission Beach is an area that has appreciated probably better than most other areas, not just on average, but here in even San Diego.
Fully agree.
Oceanfront. I'm assuming oceanfront property is my guess.
Right.
That's Mission Beach is basically all on the ocean. So.
Right. Whether you're on one side or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're on the bay or you're on the ocean. Either way. So that's a good strategy for people. So sometimes when you're an investor, you get into something and the rules change on you, like this short-term rental issue. And when the rules change on you, you have to be somewhat flexible. And 1031 can allow you a much greater flexibility to be able to get out unscathed. As you say, if you 1031 into that in the first place and you're forced to sell, that's a taxable event you did not plan on.
Absolutely, and it can be a significant taxable event depending on your situation, whether it's the amount of real estate you've depreciated because there's a depreciation recapture tax, or if you have a large tax deferral and you've done 1 or 2 1031 exchanges, and it's going to tax you all the way back to your original purchase price, in the 90s or.
You could have done a string of these things. This could be the fourth property in a string of 1031 exchanges. Exactly. Yeah. And of course, unfortunately, you're not going to get past the hit that you got because since it's no longer going to be a short-term rental, the value is not tied to that cash flow from the short-term rental anymore. It's only tied to what the appraised value of the real estate is.
Right.
It's not as opposed to income because a property throwing off $30,000 a month is going to probably sell much higher than what the average sales price of the area.
I would pay more for that than I would.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're buying a business.
Right.
You're buying a home that's also a business. You're not just buying the physical real estate.
100%. And so one of the things that I believe, almost my tagline, if you will, is I believe with good data you can make good decisions, and with a lack of data you make random decisions. And so that's one thing I really appreciate about the Building Solid Foundations radio show that you have here, is that I think you do a really good job of educating people and giving them the ability to make the right decision for themselves because they have the right data.
Right, and then that's a lot of the reason I do this show is it's a byproduct of it is the audience gets well educated. But one of the primary purposes is I get educated. See, I get to bring people like you, and I learn things every time I'm here.
That's great.
What I've discovered in this business, because I walk in places and people think, oh, that's the land guy. He knows everything. He's the expert. And to compare to a lot of people I am, but my partners know more than I do about what I do, which is why I'm partnered with them. But also I've discovered that the most erudite expert in any field still knows a thimbleful of all the information that's available in that field because it's an infinite ocean of information. And so all of us have so much to learn every day.
I've sat at top 5,000 or so transactions as a 1031 exchange accommodator, and every week I learn something new. So that's probably one of my favorite things about real estate.
Yeah, and the more you do things, the more you learn of, I didn't know this about it, this came up and I never dealt with that before.
Right.
Oh, this loophole's here, I didn't know that was there. And as you go through the practical experience, I teach in a college, and one of the things, I like the old saying that in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is.
I like that. It's very solid.
Yeah. Once you get into the meat of doing whatever it is you're doing, whether you're roofing things or baking cupcakes or whatever your business is, you learn all the kind of stuff that nobody taught you in the classes because you can't cover all the bases. It's an infinite ocean of information and nobody can absorb it all. So you get to learn every day. I love learning about different things from different people. And I notice one of the great things you like to focus on is being an educator about 1031s. You're kind of a 1031 evangelist.
I like that. I've used the word kindergarten teacher before. I like evangelist better.
Yeah.
Because, I think it's so interesting to see so many people in so many different situations, right? Whether it's helping, say, a partnership that's saying, hey, we want to grow and we want more partners. Whether it's a partnership saying, hey, we want to walk away from our partners. Whether it's, whatever situation somebody's in, it's really neat to be able to dive into the details with them. And that's my favorite thing about my role and where I am professionally. And I look forward to continuing to help people grow, help them with their situations, and educate. That's my
and I've heard you speak before, and you like to open up your talks with a little snippet that talks about why you like to make time for people and educate because you have nothing else in your life. Is that really true?
So, at this point, I'm 39 years old, and I don't have a wife. I don't have a dog. I don't have things that are time pressures. And so my favorite thing is real estate. And if I can spend my time and energy on that, then, there's nothing else I'd rather do. And the pandemic, I think, showed us, hey, what would your life look like if you had to take a step away for a moment?
That's right.
And I hated that. I'm glad to be back around people. I'm glad to be back educating. I'm glad to, be on the phone with people and say, okay, what's your situation? How can we keep you from paying taxes? With 1031 exchange firms, I think that's one of the things that makes us different is we just say, okay, how can we help in your situation? How can we be solutions oriented? My favorite thing.
Right. With that, we're going to take another short break. We'll be right back to wrap this up with Brandon Burns talking about 1031 exchanges on building solid foundations.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 95137855316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. This is your host, Steve Matley. We're talking to Brandon Burns about 1031 exchanges. Brandon, we talked a little bit offline about people who kind of undervalue their real estate and they're not, I guess, they're trying to be good landlords, but they're actually not being good landlords by being too nice. So share some of your story with us.
So I like how you put that. So I have a friend who lives in Escondido, and she bought a home with a accessory dwelling unit or small unit behind it in 2013, and she lives in the back house and she rents out the front house. And there were renters in place when she purchased the property in 2013. 13, and they were renting her 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for $1,500 a month.
So she bought the property. She moves into the accessory unit.
Yep.
The people that are in the main house stay in the main house. She doesn't have to find tenants.
Correct.
Easiest tenant deal ever.
Easiest tenant deal. She likes them. They're an older couple. We were talking about it the other day, and she says, gosh, it would just be great if I had some more income to do some of these other things. And I was thinking about it. I said, well, how much do your tenants pay? And she's like, oh, they pay $1,600.
So $1,600 will get you a studio apartment somewhere, maybe.
That maybe will get you in a bad area.
Yeah.
So I think the average rent for a 1-bedroom in San Diego, I think it was like $2,400.
Yeah, about $2,500. Yeah.
Yeah. So in her specific example, she's owned the property for 9 years and she's raised the rents $100 a month. In that time period, the value of her property has not grown by that percentage. So we ran the math, and she's actually earning 1.8% on the value of her real estate today.
So she could have got a CD at the bank for that.
Yeah. She's getting the return that you would get with a bank CD, but she's having the risk of having a property where things could go wrong, right? Her tenants are telling her now, hey, we need new windows.
Toilets, yeah, all stuff.
Absolutely. So what's really interesting for people that have owned real estate and have had quote unquote good tenants, whether those tenants are good or not, if you like your tenants and you haven't raised your rents at least 10% per year every single year over the past decade, then money is being left on the table. And someone theoretically could sell their property, buy the identical property next door with renters that are in there paying market rent, and they could double or triple the amount of money that they're walking away with without paying taxes, and that can be a powerful thing.
But what she doesn't want to do is put the renters in a position where they may not be able to afford rent and have to move out. And I get that. There's the human side of it, but at the same time, that renter is not going to be the person that covers her medical bill or pays for the roof to be repaired or whatever.
Or her kid's school or her car breakdown. That's right. Absolutely. I had another exchange client, and about, I think, 15 or 20 years ago, he bought a small multifamily in Ramona. And there were things that were starting to go wrong. I think he mentioned he felt like he was going once a week to Ramona to fix someone's microwave. And we ran the math, and he was earning about the same, a little bit less than 2% on the value of his property, because his property had gone up by 10, 12, 15% kind of consistently, and he was raising the rents every other year by 5%.
So for that kind of compensation, he's become a handyman.
He's become a handyman. So he sold the property, did a 1031 exchange into something that was more income focused. He was able to triple his income and not have to drive to Ramona to fix microwaves.
Yeah, it's nice when the money just shows up in the bank and you don't have to do anything for it. People always ask, why did you and your partners decide to do the kind of projects you do? Mm-hmm. I said, honestly, it's a mixture of greed and laziness, and that sounds terrible, but it's the most amount of money we could figure out for the least amount of work, and we don't want to do that kind of work. I spent a lot of my younger years, I was a contractor, but before that I was kind of handymaning in order to get my contractor's license.
Sure. As
I went through school, and I'm too old to do that now. It's hard on the body. I did this in Palm Desert. You know what it's like in the summer to fix roofs in Palm Desert? It's brutal out there. Think about how it's been here. And you put a tool down and pick it up 2 minutes later and burn the skin off your hand and those kind of things. So not having to do that physical work is nice and have the money come in. And I think for people that get into real estate, it's not like what you see on HGTV. Now, they're doing physical work, but they're really not. When the cameras cut away, a real crew comes in and does the work. The people that are on the show, they come in, put their gloves on, and for about 10 minutes pretend to do work while the cameras capture them, right? And then they don't really have the pressure of selling the house because it may or may not. They got a national sponsor, so they don't care if they make any money, right?
Right.
So people get lured into that stuff, and then they find that it's a lot of hard demo and construction is a lot of hard work. I happen to be one that prefers how can I not risk my physical health? How can I not breathe asbestos? How can I not spend all my time doing arduous, hard labor?
Let's keep you away from
when
asbestos.
I could make money doing something easier. So I'm all with your guy that doesn't fix microwaves anymore.
That's great. That's an important place to be.
And again, 1031 exchanges are something, if you can get into a property and it has appreciated, 1031 exchange can accelerate that growth because you can exchange into something of equal or higher value that maybe has a better potential to grow now. Maybe you've maxed out as much potential growth as you can in one place. Maybe that's a place that you own and there's a lot of hands-on work because it's an older property that needs a lot of TLC, and now you can transfer into something else that you don't have to do it, and maybe you transfer into something that has enough cash flow in another place that you can afford a property manager.
Absolutely, 100%. No, and financially, if someone's going to sell and buy real estate, there's no reason to give up 30, 40, 50% of your profits. To do an exchange is very inexpensive. So we charge 2 flat fees, $995 when you sell, $295 when you buy. Comparing that to your tax bill, it's inconsequential.
Absolutely. That's pocket change. Yeah. So Brandon, if people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah. So again, Brandon Burns, president of Investors 1031 Exchange, qualified intermediary based here in San Diego. You can always go to our website, www.i1031x.com, or you can call our office, 858-539-1031.
Okay, i1031x.com. Get hold of you. And what was the phone number again?
858-539-1031.
Okay, that's Brandon Burns. And again, if you are interested in learning about 1031 exchanges, find out if that might work for you, contact Brandon. And again, even if you don't do something with him, he loves talking about it, loves educating. And like you said, he has nothing else in his life to do. So jump in there and pick his brain a little bit. I've been a pleasure having you on the show, Brandon. This is Steve Matley on Building Solid Foundations Radio. Don't forget to catch us every week on KCAA, or you can catch us afterwards on kcaaradio.com or on one of our streaming platforms, Roku, Amazon Fire, or Android on the Building Solid Foundations channel, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, go do something different this week.
KCAA, where every day is a great day. KCAA, Loma Linda.